So guys, today I'm going to do a series or a trilogy as such on binge eating. There's three major reasons from my experience working in the industry and personally that people binge eat. Now, the reason binge eating is so unhealthy and not ideal for weight loss is because when you do binge eat, it's often mindless, it's often uncontrolled, and you can often eat upwards of 10,000 calories in one day from just one single binge eating session. Now, to put that in perspective, someone my size on a weight loss program will probably eat, that's probably 4 days worth of food in one sitting, in one single sitting. And that's why binge eating can be so detrimental to people's progress. But what I'm going to talk about today is the first reason for binge eating, and that is macronutrient deprivation or extreme calorie restriction. Now, it's super common, probably the most common one is low carbohydrate diet, severely restricting a macronutrient, which is carbohydrates. But this also applies to fat, is another common one. Not so much protein. Protein's not often very restricted, but unless you're, I guess a vegan or vegetarian, in which in some cases you may not be getting enough protein. But let's go with low carb because it's one of the more common ones. Now, when you're on a low carb diet, there's a few different variations like keto diet, ketogenic diet, Atkins diet, low carbs, you're getting less than 50 grams of carbs a day or even less. The problem with this is that your body needs carbohydrates. If your job involves any form of physical activity, if you do any form of exercise throughout the week, and even if you do sort of intense, mentally stimulating things like studying or your work or your job involves very high-level thinking, your body needs carbs to function properly in these areas in most cases. And that's why people can sometimes or oftentimes binge eat when they're heavily restricting carbohydrates. You can maybe go a week, you might even be able to go 2 weeks with very low carbs, but you're going to crack at some point. It's inevitable. And I know this because I've seen it happen with clients and it's happened with myself. There's going to be a point where your body's just after those carbohydrates to a level where you physically can't do anything about it, and it's going to get them whether you like it or not. And that's where mindless, uncontrollable binge eating happens. And the things that you eat, those most accessible and most efficient sources of carbs, what are they? Heavily refined carbohydrates, heavily processed foods. We're talking very sugary foods, ice cream, chocolate. We're talking very floury foods like pizza and bread and stuff like that. Your body is going to go ahead and crack, and you're going to just smash those foods. And as I said before, when you mindlessly and uncontrollably eat large amounts of any food, you can eat upwards of 3 to 4 days worth of foods in a sitting. Now, the way around this is that you just have to, and this isn't for everyone, but for most people, you have to accept that wholly restricting a macronutrient or very heavily restricting your calories is just not sustainable. It's just not a real long-term way to get results. And I would highly recommend ensuring you have a moderate amount of carbohydrates or at least some form of carbohydrates in your diet. Same with fat and same with protein. If you overly restrict certain macronutrients, it is going to bite you in the butt. And you are going to overeat. You are going to binge eat and crave those certain macronutrients because they all have value. They all have their reasons for being there. They all have their, uses in the body. So just really consider that. And if you're on a low carb diet, or if you're on a low fat diet, or if you're on a, shake meal replacement diet, or something that highly restricts your calories or certain macronutrient, keep that in mind, because if you find yourself regularly cracking, even if it's once a week and you overeat, and overindulge in certain foods, you're probably not going to make progress long term. You might make some short-term progress, but probably not long term. Guys, keep an eye out for video 2 and 3 coming up soon. Peace.